Okay. Some of you have been part of these chats because that's the whole point. This is essentially categorically 1,000,000% not meant to be formal training, but just an opportunity to interact, to network, to share, to ask. Yeah, network in every sense of the word. What I am going to do unusually this time, because it's what kind of sparked the idea for me, is I'm going to share not slides, but a very first draft raw document, formerly known as virgin text. It's part of a book that I'm writing. It's just a chapter. And I did quite a bit of research on the various generations. And I just thought it could be useful to have to sort of spark things off. So just bear with me. Open this. There we go. Right, for anybody, or just a reminder, or for anybody who hasn't been in these chats before, this is not formal training, it is networking. Please, at any stage, just raise your hand. Otherwise, please keep muted. And raise your hand if you want to participate, because that's the whole objective. It is being recorded. Nobody will be sent to the recording, but will be on our website, all as normal. So just to sort of set the scene, as I said, I'm certainly not going to read verbatim every word of this document, but I had a look and did a lot of reading and a lot of studies, and primarily in America, but nevertheless, it's useful to be considering the different generations and how they fund nonprofit support. Let me use that as a very broad term, support nonprofits. Obviously, funding is what we want, but we also want volunteering, we want micro-volunteering, we want donations in kind, all that sort of thing. So I've looked at them. Please, guys, mute, please mute. So the silent generation, and these are terms that the marketing world has given to the generations. It's the marketing world who kind of first came up with the concept of sorting people into generational groups, because that way they can plan the marketing. And we are marketing, in inverted commas, to potential supporters. So the silent generation, my mum is in this group, born between 1925 and 1945. Also sometimes known as the greatest generation. Probably the best we're likely to get from this supporter group at the moment are bequests, which hopefully we have tied up a long time ago. Because sadly they're dying. The next group is still very much a group to be reckoned with, the baby boomers. And these are not my terms, as I said. This is the world of marketing has come up with these terms. Obviously, these are the children of the silent generation. They are born just after the Second World War, 1946 to 1964. So far, literally in terms of amounts given and taking inflation into account globally, this generation has given the most amount of money kind of in history. And they feel quite a strong call to, as it were, give back. A cliche I hate, but still, you know what I mean. So they are a generation that still responds to, let's call it, traditional methods of asking. And one of the my key messages, why have I included a chapter on the generations in a new book I'm writing? It's just a general kind of how-to fundraising update book, because my last one is out of print, and I thought instead of just reprinting, I'll just do something new. Because if we don't consider and understand the generations, we are going to simply be appealing for funding to them, and I'm using it very generically, in the same way we've always done, and then we'll wonder why we're not getting support. And I mean, it's obviously why I've sort of looked into it. So, and funny enough, just yesterday, I had a meeting with a lady, I would put it about 22 or 23. And she is an alumni from a university, and I'm helping them to organize a reunion. And obviously part of the reunion is get together, but also there's a very strong fundraising aspect to it. And this particular university has not been very, what's the word, jacked up on the ball about maintaining the contact details of all their alumni. So they've got to find them in the first place to invite them. And this is her volunteer role. All I'm doing is the actual boring stuff about the event and the venue and the catering and that kind of stuff. So I was discussing with her her plan of how she intends to market. And then I said to her, what social media platforms are you going to be putting it on? And these are her exact words. And this is the first time I've ever chatted to her, brand new involved. She said, well, for the older people, I'm going to put it on Facebook. And for the younger ones, definitely Instagram. She said, maybe not TikTok. So she was thinking through all these platforms out loud. So note for the older ones, she's going to put on Facebook. So and yes, the baby boomers really took to Facebook. You know, you'll probably find their kids or their grandkids set up the pages. And especially South Africans. I've talked to so many South Africans whose family, either children and or grandchildren, have emigrated, and they say, Facebook lets me know what my kids and grandkids are up to around the world. And this generation doesn't readily change, because social media and all matters digital are a little bit confusing to the majority. Not everybody, some of them are incredible. So Facebook's not going away, even if younger people, even as younger people, are not closing their Facebook pages necessarily, but not seeing it as the most important go-to. The baby boomers who've made it onto Facebook are staying there. And they also respond to sort of traditional methods. Now, remember, my research has been global. And of course, in South Africa, the postal service has pretty much collapsed. But what this was meaning was direct mail, sort of old-fashioned, what we rather rudely call junk mail, is definitely still working for this generation. And of course, goes without saying that the baby boomers are the key generation to be converting, individual donors to be converting to leaving bequests and legacies. That's absolutely vital. But you know all this stuff. Generation X. So now these are a little group in between the baby boomers and the millennials are the Generation X's. X's, Generation X, or known as Generation Xers. Have I left something out? So you guys bear with me. Oh, sorry, I think I've sort of, no, that's right. I'm sorry, it's literally a first draft. Okay, so we've got the Generation X, 1965 to 1980. And they are fascinatingly already clearly showing, you know, they've been giving for long enough for nonprofit to be clearly tracking what they are preferring to do, you know, their tendencies, their preferences, their habits. Fascinatingly, they don't have that whole naive trust. The baby boomers are probably terribly busy making money and not giving the kind of thought to how squeaky clean are nonprofits, and they'd get a nice appeal and they would just donate. Whereas the Generation X are a little less trusting, and they're doing a lot more research of not-for-profit organizations, and are saying that across the board, whether it's faith-based, whether it's literally a club, university, schools, and nonprofits, everything. They are taking a little bit more time to look into organizations before giving. And then I think there's a very strong message there. So what have they been reading in the media about organizations that are less than squeaky clean? Quite interesting. And they also, I find this a fascinating trend, and it's come up in America, Canada, Australia, UK. It's pretty global. No such research that I could find has happened in South Africa. A good friend of mine is currently doing her PhD on alumni giving to universities in South Africa, but she hasn't finished it. So I'm going to be connecting with her on that. But this generation has quite a strong charity begins at home kind of feeling. In other words, they are showing a tendency to support, for instance, the local hospice or the local food bank or the local something or the local branch of the SPCA, rather than somebody living in Klerksdorp just giving to an organization that is either global or in Johannesburg or something. So that was quite a strong trend, and it's very, very interesting. Obviously, understandably, like this generation and those following are very concerned about climate change. Their priorities are climate change, because they are going to live into the world that is getting worse environmentally, and their children and their grandchildren. So that's a big one for them. Education, vital. They have seen the hard work that their baby boomer parents put into ensuring this generation has a better education, and they've seen the benefits that come from education, from ECD through to tertiary support. So very, very strong and interesting support for anything education, which includes skills training, by the way, and also just social justice, addressing unfairness with children as their priority. So it's an interesting one to monitor. I think it's really really useful to because this is just sort of following the baby boomer group, and they're making more and more money, and they're going to becoming quite a generation to reckon with. I'm not going to go through every single chapter. When you see box, it's just literally to tell my DTP person what to do in the book. Okay, the millennials. That's 1981 to 1986 when they were born. They're also called Generation Y because they were born very much at the turn of the century, hence the millennial term. But of course, following X, Y, and then we'll eventually get to Z, so they're kind of known as both. They also have a burning sense of social responsibility and everything that might mean. One thing about this generation, a couple of things define this generation. One I found most interesting is that they earn more than any previous cohort at the same ages. It's just an interesting trend. But of course, the living costs have increased. So and all research around people's income and earning has been adjusted for inflation, of course. So it was just, never before has a generation been earning this much at as early an age. But then conversely, so the cost of living has gone up, and not always kept up to date with the millennials earning. There's also quite interesting differences, quite remarkable differences between those born earlier in this cohort and a little later. But still, they care deeply. I'm just going to this part, which I thought useful. So like the Generation X's, they prefer to support local initiatives. So you see this very strong trend in local. Those of you in this call will have, it'll mean something different to everyone, but it's quite useful to know. And they find they are so angry, so outraged at inhumanity, cruelty, injustice, that type of thing. And remember that technology evolved with the Gen X's and the millennials, and they've embraced social media and just matters digital as kind of part of their lives. And so it's, as you can see, as people are getting younger, online, digital, etc., is just becoming more and more normal. Whereas the baby boomers had to kind of get the kids or the grandkids to assist them train. They're probably still constantly asking how to do something, or go on Facebook and something has changed and get terribly upset. Whereas as the generations get younger, understandably, they are taking to anything online much more quickly. Now, I love this. I found this was fascinating, and it's very real. I can relate to a lot of people I know. The millennials are passionate about social enterprises, and they'll support by things. They'll support whatever that means, but of course it will be paying for a service or a product from a social enterprise, even if it costs more. Now, it's important to add in here that in South African law, we still don't have any legal control, if that's the word, any laws to govern social enterprises. So while the term, because it's a lovely term, is becoming more and more popular, in law we have only three fields. We have government, we have business, and we have nonprofit. So where social enterprise fits on a legal level in the other countries that have gone as far as laws to govern these sectors, if it's somewhere between business and non-profit. South Africa is incredibly slow to get there. Some business people who are in business, my personal definition of a social enterprise for someone in business is simply, you know, running a business, doing business while doing good. That's what but so that's the business people. Whereas the term social enterprise, it's creeping in for non-profits, or non-profits are beginning to say we run a social enterprise, when what they are in fact and by law doing is some income generation. So I'm just kind of qualifying that. So in South Africa, we still speak of social enterprise, which could be a for-profit business that has a bit of a social heart, or income generation run by a non-profit. But the point is, the millennials are saying, I'll order my muffins from the organization down the road, the non-profit down the road that is baking as part of their income generation. The muffins cost a bit more than Woolworths or whatever, but hey, it's going to a good cause. So that's a very, it's a lovely trend, and good one to watch. Now, this I've just highlighted for this morning. And my whole point of this is that, and I'm going to read it if you don't mind, non-profits that neglect digital and social engagement to support their fundraising will struggle, and some will quite frankly even collapse. Alarmingly few organizations globally have a dedicated digital role in their staff or volunteers on the organogram, nor do some smaller charities actively ensure that digital marketing skills are incorporated into the role of the fundraiser. So the point is, as the older donors, supporters are dying, getting Alzheimer's, whatever, or they've set their giving and that's it. If we're going to bring younger people on board as supporters in every sense of that word, we have got to ensure that we have and whatever that might be, arrangements to have digital marketing. It could be that the fundraiser, him or herself, is not all that personally interested in social media, or, you know, doesn't desperately bother about it. Doesn't mean that that person can no longer be the fundraiser. That person would need to find the support. Could be a volunteer. We must not forget, we've got in our country, and I know in one of these talks we covered volunteerism in depth, we've got to change our attitude in South Africa and stop considering volunteers as simply free labor. We've got to, and yes, it is free help, but we've got to also understand that volunteers get something back. Could just be a feel-good factor of having done some good, or it could be for a younger person something on their CV. I asked this young person who's helping with the university's marketing yesterday, great that you're doing, because I didn't find her. I just got introduced to her, and I said, "That's wonderful that you're doing this." I kind of found a diplomatic way to say, "Why are you doing this?" She says, "Oh, I'm trying to build a CV." Totally honest about it, which is very win-win. So we need to make sure that somehow, even if we outsource the service, find a volunteer, whatever we're doing, we cannot simply keep doing absolutely nothing but sending out email requests, for instance. Yes, Sam, jump in, please. You're muted.
Hi, Jill. Thanks so much for the presentation so far. Just a question around social enterprises. Are the caps still at 5% of turnover or 200,000 for non-profits before they start paying tax?
Good question. Just I'll put. Thank you, Sam. I'll put in a bit of context. Historically, in order to maintain one's PBO status, public benefit organization status, and for that matter, from those of us whose organizations have 18A, which we can issue tax certificates to our donors, the law used to say that if organizations self-generate, because I love the term social enterprise, but when I'm talking to nonprofits, I'm inclined to focus the term income generation, because until the law changes. So the law used to say that nonprofits could self-generate up to 15% of their annual income, and thereafter they were in danger of losing their PBO status. Because what does PBO status mean? Fundamentally, it's that nonprofits don't pay tax on the money they get in. And SARS, because this is essentially a SARS thing, used to feel that it's unfair to for-profit businesses if non-profits can go into competition making muffins or whatever they do and not pay any tax. I was actually very active in the whole lobbying of SARS when I was involved with the Institute of Fundraising, Southern Africa Institute of Fundraising, and we took on the then Finance Minister, Trevor Manuel, on this very matter, and he was amazing. Thanks to the lobbying, they changed the law. They took away that 15% cutoff, and they have left it as a kind of no specific cap, but very much with the auditor's involvement to monitor. So somewhere between the auditor's advice and SARS will kind of monitor it. Because remember that we could be doing something to make money in direct competition to a for-profit business. So it's softened a bit, Sam, but the simple advice is, if somebody says to me, which is usually the question, oh, but what if we lose our PBO status? I go, I wish you such a problem. Because if you have something that is so successful in generating income, it is such a, it's a walk in the park. It is such a simple thing. You just hive that little income generating initiative off, create an actual for-profit company, keep going exactly the same way, and that company donates all its profits. So as I said, it's a problem I wish to nonprofits. Thanks, Sam, for raising that. Okay, moving on. Gen Z, Generation Z. Now, this is a generation that is seriously being studied at the moment. And there's some very in-depth research that has happened, literally asking thousands of them to respond to surveys. And I've got some of that info here. So they were born between 1997 and 2012. So obviously you've got slightly younger ones now, but some of them, those who were born in 1997 are not quite that young, but it's just their attitudes. It's their attitudes that is important to understand. They're also known as the activist generation. I'm talking to you from the UK right now, and every single, since the Gaza-Israeli nightmare started up, every single weekend, there are huge demonstrations in London. I know because I was here when it was South Africans could vote at the High Commission. I had to dodge the demonstrations and streets were closed. And people in the UK have got to kind of know, if you're going to be in London, just mind out, find because the demonstrations are all, they have permission to be there. You can see online the routes they're going to take and that sort of thing. And it's all ages, of course, but the young people, I mean, it's just amazing. It doesn't surprise me they're called the activist generation. And of course, they're starting to be donors, and they are essentially the donors of tomorrow. So we need to begin to understand them. And as you know, they've spent a substantial amount of their time on social media, not particularly on Facebook. They have not known a time without smartphones. I remember before smartphones. I'm sure many of you do. I remember buying my first iPad. I remember reading about the iPad and going, the what? And struggling. Nobody taught me. I came home with this thing and I was fascinated at how intuitive it was. So we also need, a very important thing about this generation is that the lockdowns with the pandemic have affected the percentage of their lives more than anyone else. So it's just an interesting generation and a vital generation to be considering. So much of their lives happen online. And they are, for instance, the generation that are the strongest supporters of online fundraising events such as watching video gaming. Those of you who attended our conference last year will remember the absolutely amazing talk we had from by a guy called Julian, whose speciality is fundraising via gaming. And this lot they'll know who their favorite gamers are, who they follow. They'll watch them playing live in general, but they'll also watch them live streaming gaming specifically for fundraising. And this is it's about 80% of the donors of this generation. And they don't have a great deal of money to give yet, but they're so accustomed to it. They love the gamification of anything. I am just setting up the management of a crowdfunding a capital campaign. There will be some crowdfunding in it as well, but a capital campaign to build a new ECD center in very rural Limpopo. And I've asked the web guy to bring in as much gamification as possible. I want, for instance, I think we're pegging it at 10 Rand, I can't quite, 10 or 15 Rand. Minimal donation, you want to buy a brick. So ordinary such campaigns will be literally pay 10 Rand or multiples of 10 Rand to buy a brick. But because I'm thinking of this generation, I'm saying to him, can you code it so that, Tanya buys a brick for and she's able to drag her brick into like a little picture of the house or something. Just any gamification we can bring in are very, very important. And two of the things that they care most about are inclusion. They don't want people excluded from things because of any, they want no discrimination. They don't want that. They have these, they'll get fired up online about things like, they went to a building the other day and there was no wheelchair access. Anything that the broad term inclusion means, and of course climate change, of course it's vital with all its ramifications. So it's important to understand them, but we need to shift our thinking. Now, this is the report that I saw, and you can look it up, Blackboard, latest report, Gen Z at the table. And this was this huge survey. Here are the numbers. They had an online survey with 1,008 Gen Z adults. Remember, in any cohort, you'll have the younger ones. So these were the ones born from 1997 to 2005. And then they also, interestingly, spoke to 200. They had a slightly separate, but part of the biggest survey, 208 fundraising professionals. So they wanted to learn about, they wanted to ask they had questions for the Gen Zs themselves. And then they also, interestingly, said, tell us from your perspective what it's like fundraising from this generation. And I thought some of them, I think there's so much for us to learn. The Gen Zs have this global perspective. Don't forget about that, because they're online. They know what's going on around the world. I mean, I was in Cyprus last year. I flew home on a flight that was, I went to Cyprus. My plane was meant to depart at midnight. There was a delay. We only left Cyprus at 3 o'clock in the morning on the 6th of October. So that was the morning of the 7th of October. Cyprus's closest country is Israel, that part. My grandson is, then he was 11. So when he woke up the next morning, I had got back at some crazy hour. And the first thing he said to me was, oh, glad you're back because now there's a war. I mean, he was 11. He knows what's going on. It's amazing. Over 80% of these Gen Zs said that they will support nonprofits that they support. Sorry, this is current. What do you do? Over 80% of them already supporting nonprofits in some way, money or time, and over half of them already giving money. No, not necessarily large amounts, but you see the trend. I don't think you could say that for any of the other generations that went before. Trust is top of their list. What's the most important thing? Trust. Some of you I've spoken to know that I'm involved in this new initiative called Izinga Assist to assess South African organizations to have them rated. We're calling it the sort of SABS mark of the nonprofit world, but people around the world are so concerned about corruption in South Africa, and I'm afraid their minds go to believing that there's corruption there too. So trust, this is such an interesting thing. Trust is the absolutely most important, as well as, of course, impact. Gone are the days of the silent generation, the baby boomers, where you send some lovely fluffy stuff about a problem and blah, 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 fluffy, blah, blah. We have got to prove impact. That, I mean, because I have been training, and my work has traditionally been in fundraising from corporates and trusts, and particularly UK donor trusts. And I've felt this constant fight of getting people in the South African nonprofit sector to up their game on the whole impact, because donor trust and foundation don't want it. But here we are seeing that the young people are going, don't give us fluffy blah blah. We want proof of the impact. We're not giving money to this bottomless pit that, you know, of your bank accounts. We want to give money don't just tell us how, you know, the problem of people abandoning kittens, which would be enough to motivate older generations to give. We want to know exactly what you're doing about these kittens. We want to see videos of what they look like when you rescued them and how you're caring for them. And we want to see happy purring little fat kittens. We want to know what you are doing to check out people at homes before they adopt them. We want proof before we are parting with our money. And I think it's great. If anything, this generation is going to bring the nonprofits kicking and screaming into the place they really should be. This is quite interesting. They are split. About 50% of those who were interviewed about being interested in the statistical reporting versus hearing personal stories. I found that one quite interesting. So it wasn't, you know, yes, you want impact, but how do you want reporting? Some said we'd like to hear a story because, you know, storytelling is a buzz thing in our sector, but many are still interested in the stats. Here is, without exception, the most important trend. Giving online, I didn't even add that here, must be very simple and very quick and very easy. No complex forms. It'd be like one click, basically. Don't bombard them with a whole lot of garbage. They are going to move on. They do not have long attention spans. And this is this group, this generation is causing an incredible increase in point of sale donations. In other words, you go to a shop and you're about to tap your card or put in your number, whatever happens, and let's say your purchase is 27 Rand 10 cents.
Okay. Do they want to turn?
Up comes something automatic that says, would you like to round this up? Yes or no? They've got to click the green and they've got to tap. The quickest, the simpler, the easiest. Absolutely vital. We're going to lose them if we want all kinds of long, slow processes. So vital. They love a sense of community, maybe because they were spent off their life in lockdown or something. But the ones who are working are loving being part of the sort of work community of volunteering with their workmates. And they are also, because there's nothing they have to do. You see, it's quick. They just have to say yes once and they can say, hey, change it if necessary. But they love, for instance, being part of payroll giving schemes. So they tell the employer to deduct the money and from their salaries and pay it over the charity. They don't even have to do anything. So you see that this is something we've got to get our heads around as well. Sam, please come in.
It's going to give us problems when they want a Section 18A tax receipt.
Well, of course. So yes, but the point is now but you see, what's in it for them. If they want the receipt, it's a law, so they can't blame the nonprofit. Government says, and you know how they've increased the requirement. So if you want a tax receipt, sorry, not our fault. Government says they'll do it to get their tax rebate. There's no, but good point, Sam. Excellent point. This I thought was good, useful. Very few give in response to the old traditional fundraising methods. Only 8% of this over 1,000 surveyed will sign up a monthly debit order. I know that it's the happy place of most organizations. Oh, if we could just have, 1,000 people with a debit order. Well, guys, sorry, in your dreams. Older people hate debit orders because they are a nightmare to cancel. Online banking has made it a little bit easier, but we just have to accept that as people get younger and younger, there's a resistance to debit orders. So it's wonderful if you can get debit orders signed up. In fact, this university exercise I'm doing right now, it's a little reunion event, and the idea is those with debit orders because it's food and drink and everything served, they get invited free. So one of the tasks I've had to do, because it's kind of manual, it's not part of this volunteer, was to email, I don't know, kind of personal email to those who have debit orders running and this is a group that have read debit orders running for 12 years, probably about 30. So far, I'm in the middle of it. So far, although the debit orders are running, 8 out of 30 emails have already bounced. So they've forgotten about the debit orders. I can't even get hold of them. But debit orders are, that's a happy place of years ago. And only about 8%, sorry, a different 8%, only about 8% will even give in response to an email. That's, whew. So they're giving in response to something digital, something online, not online. So on social media, on other platforms. But sending them an email, 92 out of 100 emails to this generation are not giving you any money. But all stuff we have to be aware of. And also they're following on social media the nonprofits that they trust and they care about these. And one of the things they feel they are doing to support is sharing these posts. So that is only telling us we have to be more and more and more serious with our planning of what we're doing on social media and not restricting it to Facebook. They love petitions. They like to sign and submit petitions because they're quick and easy. I'm talking to you from the UK, as I said, and there is a law in the UK. If 100,000 people sign a petition on whatever, the government is forced to have a debate in Parliament about it. That's just UK. But in fact, there's a debate happening now on, what is the term? Assisted dying. Somebody's terminally ill. They don't want to, live in pain until they are definitely going to die. There's been a petition happening about that. They've had their over 100,000. The government is forced to debate that issue. But because, and I've signed like I'm sure many of you, lots of petitions. It is name, email, sometimes address, purely if, for instance, if it's a UK one, or because I think they could be checking the authenticity. But if it's aimed at part of, there has to be a debate. There have to be people who have UK addresses, and I'm at my daughter's house here, so luckily I have a UK address. But they have to be quick, very, very, very quick, not a long blah blah. They're often quite spontaneous. They just get an idea in their head and they do it. That's why they will respond within a split second when they make a purchase and they ask to add some money. They go for it. So it's the spontaneity, the speed. Don't waste our time because we've got 4,000 other things we want to do online. But 40% of them said that they do conduct the research before they support in everything that means an organization. So there's no naivety here. And nearly 70% said that the impact reporting is likely to motivate increased giving. And I thought this was quite endearing. Over half, 57% said the same about letter of thanks. If they make a donation, they want to thank you. And preferably not just restricted to some automated response. So yeah, I thought that it's very interesting. Now, when they were literally asked in general, how do you think you can make a difference? They felt that both volunteering and promoting things online would be the greatest impact because they're not necessarily in the financial position to make major donations. But still, my point, and then I can shut up because this is essentially not all about me talking, is we have to be aware of the generations. That's the whole issue. So I know I spoke to a couple of people. Tanya, from home. Do you want to just add, ask, share, moan, whatever you like? Are you able to come in?
Hi, Jill.
Hi, Tanya.
Should I put my camera on? I don't
Yeah, as you like. Sometimes it
know.
affects the quality of this. Go for it. This is supposed to be incredibly
I don't know
late.
where I am. Oh, there.
No.
Yeah, it is very interesting, and often, the usual story with a small team, one doesn't analyze these generations enough. Recently, what I've found so interesting is, as you know, organizing a fundraising event in London. And I am trying to get home from home more content on LinkedIn. And it's very interesting to see the engagements and what's happening on LinkedIn as a professional platform. So, yeah, I see a lot going on there, and we are really trying to actively, whether it be thought leadership, whether it be about, and it's different to Facebook and Instagram. And so, yeah, that would be, I think, my comment.
Thank you, Tanya. That is
Yeah.
so That is wonderful. You know, the platforms all started up and you never quite knew where they were going to go. And LinkedIn, sort of what the original thinking behind it was, I'm not too sure, but it kind of became a place where people were focusing on having their bios and finding jobs, and HR people were focusing, and there's a lot of cracky. I get offered about 6 jobs a day. And I think largely the algorithms are doing it. But it has held its own. It has become highly respected, and thought leadership is what it's about. And people are engaging. So good on you for doing that. I mean, whether it is around, I happen to know Home from Home because my very dear friend Pippa Shaper started it, and it's about creating literally houses, not big institutions, for children who can't live with their birth families. And if I'm right, you just have 6 children in a house. So, you know, you've got a different take on the care of vulnerable children. So, you know, you can have huge debates. I think it's brilliant. So good on you guys. It's not necessarily the place to post, this is us, this is what we do, please give us money. But it's a brilliant platform not to be neglected. Sam, whose hand was up? Sam, you'll go for it. Thanks, Tanya.
I've got a question around supporter personas. So there used to be this beautiful thinking around that you analyze your givers and you kind of create a persona. You know that your most common giver is a 25-year-old young professional doing X, and that you then target your language and your platforms and everything to meet that typical kind of supporter in the most efficient and effective way. Is that still practiced?
Yeah, it's a brilliant question. I was actually having a discussion with somebody about this the other day. It was very much it started very much with Facebook. And that's what's behind Facebook ads. You can literally please guys, mute whoever's not muted. Someone's not muted. Somebody please mute. Yeah, so Facebook ads, or where this all started, Facebook ads are one of the most inexpensive ways to advertise. And sorry, is it Nikki? Somebody please, I'm just trying to make sure everybody's muted.
I think you can possibly mute from your side. Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so this is still a thing with Facebook. It's a way Facebook, quite frankly, makes money, and we like it because people like it because it's incredibly inexpensive. So yes, it is still a thing because the whole point is the algorithms. You know, because why it's so inexpensive is you create your lookalike audience, or your, you know, as you say. So yes, it's still happening. Yes, it's still available. But it would be interesting to ask a random 20 people, say from 20 different nonprofits, who have used this facility, because it's tempting because it's so inexpensive, and the success they've actually had. So I'm saying, my advice is simply test it. You know, you might spend, because it's not a lot, you could decide I'm going to spend 200 Rand or something. And
sorry, I guess the question is, do I sit there as the nonprofit director saying, I want to target Gen Zs and therefore I'm going to do X, Y, and Z? Or do I look at who's already sponsoring me and just, you know, beat that, flog that horse, you know, if
yeah,
you know that you...
it's kind of both. Now, if you're saying you want to target Gen Zs, it wouldn't be, I don't know what you do, so I'm going to pretend it's animals, domestic animals randomly. So it wouldn't be just Gen Zs. It may be Gen Zs who, through their own likes and shares and posts and follows and everything, are concerned about the plight of domestic animals in Cape Town or whatever it is. So that's as kind of targeted as you can get. However, it's well known that fewer and fewer Gen Zs are on Facebook. So, but it's worth, and you know, testing is a thing which we should do. It's standard practice in companies like DMI. I mean, I speak to the ladies at DMI, and to my amazement, Downs Mary International, I mean, they've been around for kind of ever and leading in the country with direct mail kind of fundraising for individuals. And I keep saying, but but the posts collapsed. How are you still doing? Because some people still want posts. They said, well, there's a lot of, they've obviously converted a lot to email, but there is still an element of hard copy. And testing is a basic thing. Testing comes from the advertising world. You would say 100, to use Sam's example. You might say, well, we're hoping to find 100 people sort of online, but we'll also try with 100 known supporters. The same as even, and testing is about message testing. If you wanted to test, let's say, Tanya, I'm looking at you, let's say you want to even take look, of course, privacy laws are a little bit difficult, obviously, understandably, for those of us who hate getting stuff we don't want. But you might even, of your entire mailing list, you might divide it in half, literally A to M and N to Z or whatever. You're going to say, I'm going to send this email request to half and that totally different wording. That's testing. Or you might just say, let's try to 100 or whatever. And this is going, is our request for money for new school bags, because it's November and it's coming up, or it's the very first thing you do in January or whatever, is that going to work better than sending a slightly different message to say we're planning an Easter outing for the kids? So that's testing 101. So I think my long answer to Sam is test. I have last point, Sam, and then is it Leah? Yeah. I did have a couple of, I have in it, and not to set out to test, but I've had some fascinating analytics that have shown that it's possibly not the best way to go about it. During COVID, I ran my first ever online auction, fundraising auction. It was immensely successful. We netted almost 800,000 Rand. And we paid for some, not a lot, 200 or 300 Rands worth of Facebook ads. And the analytics can, of course, show who came to the platform from this, or, that's a very valuable thing. Yolandi in my office, who most of you know, when we're advertising maybe our conference or something, we will use our regular mailing list, but we may also play around with some Facebook advertising, and she can tell exactly, and the various other places we might post, she can tell exactly through the very simple analytics, who came from where, as it were. And still in our case, our mailing list is still outweighs everything, but it's worth risking 200 or 300 Rand. So, and that's a very long answer, Sam, thank you. Sorry, your pronunciation is
Lilia.
Please
Lilia.
jump in. Thank you, Leah.
So my history, I've been with Doctors Without Borders, MSF. I've been with ActionAid, South Africa, all international NGOs, Save the Children, SOS. And what we would do at MSF, for example, most of the testing that we would do was for digital fundraising. So just as Jill was saying, we would do A and B testing. So we would do adverts where just your messaging is slightly different. One might be longer, one might be shorter, one might be more of an impact statement. The other one might be a softer approach in tone. And then you see which ones work better, and then you go for that one.
Yeah.
So it's constantly testing with digital. It's very important to test different images, all sorts of different things in terms of when you're looking for a new donor. And then I'd say your question with regards to the donor persona is critical. I think, especially if you're developing a donor journey for your existing donors, then I would say, have a look at who is your typical donor. Make sure you get to know your donor. It's really important to then communicate with them in a way that they prefer. And in terms of frequency, in terms of, like you were saying, Jill, do they prefer impact or statistics or stories or whatever it may be? So that's really important. And then I was just going to share that it's also about what you want. So who do you want to target as your non-profit organization? So for us, working in international NGOs, we've had the budget, and we've been very fortunate to be able to do face-to-face fundraising and to to invest in that and to target monthly regular givers on debit order. And what we found specifically when it comes to monthly donors is that, interestingly enough, what you call your Gen Z, your ages, so sort of up to about, I think, age 27, if I'm not mistaken, really want to give. They really, really want to give, even via debit order.
Brilliant.
I quickly brought up an old cohort of donors of about 3,000 donors, just to remind myself of the figures and that. But we knew this. We knew they really want to give. They really don't mind giving monthly debit orders, but it wasn't worth it for us as an NGO because we were paying, let's say, 1,500 Rand per donor. If the donor was missing 2 or 3 consecutive payments, we had to stop their debit order. So we would lose that investment before we'd even broken even. So we actually stopped signing up. It was a rule that the agents weren't allowed to sign up under 25s at all for monthly
Sorry to
donations.
interrupt, this is fascinating. Is it because the amounts they were given were low?
So
Or
yes,
just the age.
gift,
Okay.
yeah. So the average gift amount in general for face-to-face was around between 150 and 200 Rand a month. We were always trying to push it up to the 200 Rand mark. But yeah, so you would find these youngsters signing up, they want to donate and everything, but it wasn't necessarily successful for the organization. I'd say the bulk of our donors, about 48%, was millennials. And their performance was also not great in terms of, not the best in terms of what we would call a quality donor. Obviously, somebody who debits always come back paid. They stay with you for a long time. You get a great long-time value from them and that kind of thing. So the older the donor was, the more stable, of course, the more, they would loyal they were and successful you were with that donor in terms of regular monthly giving. So from that perspective, I could say definitely you want to target an older donor. And then in terms of digital, I mean, you're talking a lot about young donors. I'm talking now face-to-face fundraising, but I think that in terms of digital fundraising, you can really target, and you will find that it's much more cost-effective to get a donor that way, and they perform much, much better in terms of
nice. That's interesting.
regular giving. But yeah, I would say my little piece of advice would be target your youngsters for once-off donations.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you. Thank you. It's as I said, this is never about me teaching. The whole purpose of this is to to share. We've had some wonderful experience in these sessions where people have also shared what they did wrong. Those of you involved who are on the call when we're talking about volunteerism, the whole issue of volunteerism, one wonderful lady explained all the things they did wrong and how they learned the hard way. I think that's still one of our best. Jade, would you like to come in and share any of your experiences?
Hello, Joe. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so one experience, or rather, we conducted a survey at the Opera, I think about 2 productions ago, to understand our ticket buyers and also to better the theatre experience. And we got all sorts of demographics. And what we learned was that the older generation tends to give a little bit more when they purchase their ticket. And
Sorry
then
to interrupt, Jade, may I please be very rude? What's your organization?
Cape Town Opera.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, sorry.
And then that's fine. And then the younger generation or younger people, also students from, say, opera students from UCT or Stellenbosch, they also tend to give smaller donations when they purchase their tickets. And we've put this as part of our donor program. So our donor program starts at 1,000 Rand, ends at 100,000, and our donors enjoy the benefits that come with this program. So it would be anything from behind the scene tours to opening night receptions. And we've noticed, like Leah said, the younger generation, they tend to give smaller recurring amounts. And the older folk rather, they would give large amounts as they prefer like premium seating in the house. So yeah, I agree with constructing our donors, our support persona in understanding who's giving and how they're giving. So yes, I do agree that the younger people are giving smaller amounts and they are quite recurring and they do have an interest in the work that we do. They do follow us on our socials. They do attend, the benefits that we have.
Yeah, I
They
was
do
just
read
about
our,
to add, sorry,
yeah,
I just wanted to add that by very definition, they, and I'm being pretty broad, particularly the
mhm,
younger ones, uh, obviously love theatre and love music and essentially love opera. Because I
yes,
don't think if you, like Sam was saying, if we have a sort of, if we were having a look-alike or if we were defining the demographic, if somebody's passion is football, they're less likely to be your supporter. But as so little happens in South Africa around serious music, it's fantastic if you can find those who do care, because
yeah,
that's your future audience, etc. So yeah, brilliant. I love the
yeah,
different places you guys are coming from.
and you'd be surprised that it would be a university student that would also be giving throughout the year as well.
Brilliant.
Oh,
No, that's fantastic. Thank you. I love
thank you.
the 100 years ago, I handled all the fundraising for what was then KPAB. That's before the companies all separated. And I actually set up these, as you say, the donor programs. We used to call them the membership thing. And it started from a small amount right up to the highest amount. You would be invited to every single opening night and meet the performers and everything. People love those membership concepts. They really do. Sam.
The question that I have is, has anyone got good examples or good ways to ask, why do you support me? What have you found works best? If you give them a list and say, I support because I've got a family friend that suffered from this. I support because it's close to my home. I support. I want to. I don't know. If I just ask an open-ended question, then people just say, I support because I like you, and that's not. Why do you like me? Is what I want to know. Has anyone got good examples of how to ask that question? Because I really want to survey my current supporters and work out really why do you like me.
Yeah, it's a brilliant point. I'm going to jump in and then please anybody else. Sam, firstly, it's a good idea to have specific questions and then also at the end have a box they can type in other. Because it's a yes, no, or tick and leave the others open and have other. Because then they get in the mode of replying and you're saying you haven't actually asked their specific question, you've given them an opportunity to add. But the other important thing is, I'm afraid, a lot of people do not, just because of time, do not even bother to respond to surveys. So it's often how you word the intro to that. It's vital to know what you think, or your opinion matters immensely. If you can ask that as powerfully and tell them that's going to be very short. Don't have more than about 5 questions and an opportunity for keeping it very short. But anybody else, any input for Sam on what have you done to find out? And it's vital. It's not just what, it's why they're supporting. It's because most people just say, let's understand our donors. But for you, you're trying to get to the nub of it. And that's the key thing. Why are they supporting? And of course, it also will totally depend on the cause. So yeah, absolutely. Anybody had done anything like this or just got any thoughts for Sam on a survey?
I would just comment that
please, Celeste.
Jill, it's exactly what we would do. Is give some options and then have a box for other, so that you get some specifics back.
Anyone else? Okay, anybody got any other thoughts or questions or anything on this? It's such a vital, it's one of these blink and we are going to get it wrong. I as when I'm working as a consultant, I get people say, oh gosh, what do we do? We are from ceasing debit orders through to dying, through to whatever. We are having a drop off in our donors and we need to increase it. And it's like still very focused on, we're not even thinking in our heads outside anything other than emailing for for debit orders monthly or something. So, I think we just don't think broadly enough could be part of the issue. But if we don't understand, I mean, my primary message is if we don't understand the different generations and make a point of constantly understanding them, we're going to lose out. We absolutely categorically are going to lose out. Was it Take-A-Lot and Beautiful Gate? I remember that during COVID, when everybody's shopping had to suddenly happen online, I believe it was Beautiful Gate, just got a simple thing where if you order on Take-A-Lot, there was a, could you please add? Wow, they raised millions. Now we can't, we can't all, there's only one Take-A-Lot and they chose to support one organization. And yet that's not a new concept. Back in the day before we had the internet, there were sort of mail order catalogs. And sometimes they would have pre-selected 5 or 6 good non-profits to so not just would you like to support the SPCA or something, if you'd like to support a good cause, because you fill in your order form, and those days you would write a check and you would post it off, and then the amount is up to you and the choice is up to you. So the concept is not new, it's just Beautiful Gate were on it. And I think that's, if I have one criticism of our sector, it is that very few are innovative with something new, and there's too much, somebody's done something, so let's all copy. I mean, if I see another advert for a golf day, let's see something new, let's see something innovative. So Beautiful Gate really, they deserved those millions they got because they were on it. Sam, please come in.
So the question that I have is, when we are communicating to them, do we keep the same tone, same voice, same everything, or do we even split our messaging to say, hey, I'm now communicating to older people, therefore I'm going to use more formal language. I'm now communicating to very young people on this platform, or do we just make it as crudely
That's a
as
brilliant and vital point.
Facebook is formal, when I'm on Instagram it's young?
Definitely. The short answer is absolutely definitely. There is and the biggest thing is how long the messages are. I mean, look at the whole point of TikTok is it's not all wonderfully edited. It's very short. I mean, the Instagram is all about images. So yeah, it's the tone, it's the language, it's the brevity, it's all of that. Very, very, very important. Thanks for highlighting it, because I didn't. Yeah.
I was just going to comment, you said if you see another ad for golf day, I see the new thing now is paddle. So there's a lot of paddle charity events.
You mean like what? On rivers, oceans? What do you mean?
Oh, so paddle is a new game. It's like a mix between tennis and squash.
Sorry, paddle, sorry. No,
and it's actually quite expensive. So I think the people that play, they do have the capacity to give. Yeah.
Yes. No, you're right. I think my point is more, I mean, here's the most classic of all. When we had that incredible ice bucket challenge, then everybody, I shouldn't be so rude, many organizations around the world tried to come up with something gimmicky similar. It wasn't an actual ice bucket, but they were clearly trying to do what the ad world will call a Me Too, and they don't work. And both with Ice Bucket and what was the other one, that lovely Captain Tom, neither of them were thought out by nonprofits. They were just thought out by individuals who cared. But so the big challenge for us in our sector is, what can we come up with that is different, innovative, novel, just the sheer wow factor. But we don't do that. We just copy each other all the time. and that's why we can't blame people who go, oh no, not as somebody said to me once, oh please, not another chicken dinner. And yet, or people have put on events and they still don't get that may well be another chicken dinner. They don't bother to get a powerful an attraction. I mean, good on you, Tanya. I got your invitation to your event in London. You've got Bobby Skinstad. People are going to come. I promise you, 80% of the people are going to come because I want to They want to see, meet, hear Bobby Skinstad. 20% might because they care deeply about the children you care for. That is the reality. So you've got it right. You're having an event, you're marketing it early, and you've got a draw card in Bob Skinstad. I mean, yes, and I'm in contact with him often. He cares about what happens in the nonprofit sector in South Africa. Rugby fans will still have him on a pedestal. So, you know, good on you. You've got it right there. So well done.
Sorry,
Tanya,
No,
jump in.
The
The informality of this is what I want.
Yeah. And you know what's also been so lovely? So yes, because we absolutely realize that people in the UK don't know Home from Home. And so that's why we've got a guest speaker like Bobby. And then what I've found too is every single auction item is designed and manufactured in South Africa. Brilliant. Whether it be the field bar that's in Harrods, that's in Fortnum and Mason, they've even got their own bespoke color. And I have found it such a great way to connect and actually network in a very authentic way, and brands are keen to get the exposure in London.
Brilliant.
And it's been a lot of fun. So, you know, I've even got a biltong supplier, the biggest for example, called King Tong. And people have... and they are making biltong in the UK and distributing on internal flights in Europe. And so
it's how to get things right. That's the point.
Yeah.
It's how to get things right. Don't forget also, a lot is being, you know, I'm back and forth between UK and Cape Town, and a lot is being made at the moment, certainly in the UK, about this being the 30th year since Madiba became president. And that's more the focus rather than just 30 years of democracy, because some of the things hadn't gone well. So the focus is more on, wow, this incredible time that Madiba became president. And that year is not the year of 24. It's from the 27th of April. So it's kind of transcends. You've got a couple of months next year. So, but you're demonstrating, you're getting it right. It's not just, oh gosh, yeah, as I said, I feel sorry, but also get frustrated at people doing nothing innovative and then wondering why they can't. We've moved a bit to talking about events, but doing nothing innovative and then wondering why they can't move their tickets. Whereas if you've got an amazing event, your biggest issue is you're going to have a waiting list, and then you've got it right. Sam, please come in.
Yeah, I apologize for asking so many questions. Just loving learning.
You need the participation. That's what this is about, essentially.
So what I'm thinking about is, what are the dimensions that we use to slice up our audience? So you've used age in your presentation to say this is one dimension that we can slice our audience is by age. I can think of another one that says work status, because either my audience are employed or not employed or retired. So that's work status is another dimension. I'm guessing
geographical,
location,
where they are based,
and then
bank type. Yeah, that's interesting.
So I wonder if everyone can jump in. What are good ways?
Leo, what do you mean by bank type?
So not bank type. Bank is the actual bank. So
like, as are they old-fashioned Nedbank or more like?
Well, if you're looking at existing, if you're looking at existing donors, for donor analytics, we would look at what bank they're with. And we found it's terrible because it feels like you're stereotyping. But we found that Capitec, people that were with Capitec, you know, it was something, they just performed poorly in terms of
Capitec, it's a brilliant point. Capitec, I believe, that their USP is we have the cheapest bank charges. And their model was developed around the cheapest bank charges. I know of somebody who banks there, and he was moaning. He went there because the bank charges are cheapest. He went into the branch to deposit. They refused to take his deposit. They sent him outside to the machine, because the way they can be inexpensive is to have as few staff as possible, and they can't spoil somebody like my friend by even accepting his deposit once. So and I think you are spot on. It's not about being rude or anything. If the primary objective for somebody to open an account with Capitec is to save some bank charges, because South African bank charges are the highest in the world, then they're probably people with less disposable income. So it's a
Yeah, so
brilliant,
we
brilliant
would
point.
actually use it in our how we structured our contracts with agencies that would fundraise for us. We would say to them, okay, that you get an incentive for these donors, or but not for Capitec donors, that kind of thing. Yeah.
That's so
So,
interesting.
Which is the best bank, Leah?
Investec.
Investec, yeah.
You're not even allowed to bank there if you don't have above a certain amount of money. I've never banked in Investec,
That's
I
right.
promise you. I know people who bank there. All they do is they phone up. They don't even have to worry to open the computer and type or do it on there. They can phone and say, please pay X or Y. Yeah. And literally do it by the simplest way. They can phone and they get a quick answering and all kinds of things. No. That's a very, very interesting point.
But Sam,
Any
you might
other-
want to look at gender as well. Gender is another one, quite an important one.
Yes.
Mm.
And does that vary across the ages? Does young mums behave in a different way, but old
Probably.
mums, or
Probably.
No,
I mean,
yeah,
it's-
well, definitely there's an age thing. There's definitely an age thing in itself. Yeah. But then
area,
gender.
I'd say area of interest. I'm just randomly thinking of my son who is a surfer, and anything around beach cleanups or pollution of the ocean, or there are a couple of organizations in Cape Town who, and Durban too, who use surfing for all sorts of things. Get kids off drugs, off the streets. My niece Roxy Davis runs one around essentially for kids who are literally without limbs, and she's got adapted surfboards. Now, she ran a crowdfunding campaign that I helped her to set up on BackaBuddy to take the South African para surfing team to America 2 years ago. And we needed R1.5 million. It was just to top up for those. Some of them had found sponsorships, others hadn't. So I helped her set this campaign up on BackaBuddy. And my son, who does write for some of the global surf mags, and on his social media, a lot of surfers follow, etc. But all it took was a couple of posts carefully shared by him. Was fully funded. I mean, in record time. So it's area of interest too, Sam, I'd say. The more you can define, the better.
Out of all of these dimensions that we've now mentioned, which ones would you say is the most, if we just can split our audience on one dimension, what would be the one dimension that you would want
I'm
to?
afraid I'd have to say age and geographical area. Because these surveys showed how much of the charity begins at home, how much local support. If you think about the younger and younger people are, and the more active they are on social media, let's just maybe take Instagram and TikTok, if we just take those two. Younger people respond to things like the local animal charity. I shouldn't just say SPCA. The local animal charity is having a kennel building day, or a walking animal day, or something like that. You'll find younger people will go along. They will be sort of in the middle of grooming a dog or walking, and they'll be posting constantly, because that's what they do. It's so instinctive. They may or may not donate. They might respond to bring along a bag of dog food, whatever size it is that you can afford. But because by being there, now, if I was going, and when I do, literally last night, I volunteered in a kitchen around catering for some event. The last thing on the planet that would occur to me is to somehow take a pic of myself making sandwiches in a kitchen at the local church. But young people, I mean, in just say 3 hours at the local animal shelter, they'll be on TikTok, they'll be on Facebook, they'll be on Instagram. So definitely age and local would be my vote. Anybody else? Because not exclusive my area of expertise. My field is more the boring proposals in corporate and trust type of fundraising. So, but I just found, as I said, I was doing this research for a book, and I just thought it'd be fun to discuss. So anybody can, so don't just go with my answer. Sam's saying if you could just pick one, I've squeezed in a second one. What would you guys feel? Tanya, anyone?
I think that I think they're all agreeing with you, Jill. That's why they're not demurring.
Nothing else. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
definitely,
Anybody got a sorry, carry
I,
on.
no, I was just saying I definitely agree with you. And then I think that age is the most critical. And then I would say for us bank was, but that was with existing you can only really analyze that when you have the donor already. But then also for existing donors, I would say how did they sign up to donate to your organization is important, because that often that will speak to how they prefer to communicate.
That's
So
a
if it
very
was
good point. Yeah.
whether it's digital or in person, or or in response to a specific advert, was the advert on Facebook, was
Yes.
it whatever it was.
That is so key. It's almost one of those so obvious we didn't even think about it. Yes, it's very, very, if you Google in South Africa, there is something called the LSM, or the LSM has become a very standard marketing term, Living Standards Monitor. And that is simply again done by the marketing world. And I think it's 8, and they segment people and describe them literally from the highest earners to the poorest. And that is how they will plan on a marketing level, who's in the market for a Porsche or Lamborghini or whatever, versus who can we try and convince to save money instead of Joko tea, which is a known and trusted brand. Actually, Pick n Pay's no-name brand is cheap and it's probably made by Joko anyway. So there's having these LSMs, and they come out every year updated, and what they found is almost what we're saying. Income, because I'm reading that into what you're saying, how they signed up, where they bank. it's all going towards that description. Because you see, then you could have some of how they signed up. I'm not sure that is essentially about age. I had this fascinating experience where I got a WhatsApp from my brother. I was in the UK at the time. Got a WhatsApp from my brother, who doesn't do, we've managed to get him as far as WhatsApp, and that's a huge step. His secretary does he doesn't even do emails. And he was in his local shopping center, and there was a sort of, what do you call it when you arrange to have a display at a shopping center? It's almost more credible than face to face, because there's it's structured. You can see it's legit. So there was, and I don't even remember the organization. And he came out of shopping and he saw this and he looked at the photos and he deeply cared. But what went wrong for him was they gave him an iPad or some tablet. Now he doesn't have one. He doesn't know how to use them, as I said. He's also a bit conscious of rip-offs. So he WhatsApps me and he says, is this a legitimate organization? He insisted on something he can take away and sign up, because I'm sure that's not priority, because you want to grab people right there and then. But he cared so much, but he was not, because he doesn't know how to use a tablet. And half of him was saying, let's check with my sister who's in the sector. So he cared deeply. And so there was the having it local, having it available. Happened to be a cause he cared deeply about, so he got in his own way, and he did. I said, yeah, they're totally cool. Get your wife to help you go online and sign it. He was happy to do a debit order. Just, oh gosh. So yeah, it's a huge issue. But if we don't at least consider these things, we could just shoot our organizations in the foot. We could, if our role is fundraising, and to get away from the focus of lottery and government and companies and trusts, etc., because that is so insanely competitive. And we can engage with individuals for so many things. Volunteer time, like these young ones are saying so much in the survey. We don't have a great deal of money to give at the moment, but we know one of the values we can add is by substantially sharing on our socials. So we need to think. I'm just saying, I don't even think enough people think about this stuff. That will be just kind of useful to discuss. Any last questions, queries, thoughts, ideas, anything anybody wants to share? Ask. Okay, well, thanks so much for being here. Your time, your participation. questions are all really good, and the recording will find its way to our website. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
so
Jill.
much.
Bye-bye then.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Very
Bye.
much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.